Woolley Matrimony is a comedy from 1943. Monty Woolley plays a reclusive British artist who has lived the past 25 years in the tropics with his servant, played by Blore. He's notified he's going to receive a knighthood and reluctantly travels back home. On his first night back, Blore gets sick and passes away. Through a misunderstanding, the doctor writes Woolley's name on the death certificate, which Woolley decides to go along with. His thought process is, if everyone thinks he's dead, then he'll finally be able to paint in peace in England. From there, he falls in love with a woman, played by Gracie Fields. The catch is that she's unaware of the charade. But it doesn't take long for Woolley's past, as well as Blore's, to come back and haunt him. Unlike most great comedies from this era, this film isn't very witty. When I first saw it, I was kinda disappointed because that's usually my favorite part of any comedy. I love rewatching snappy quips from my favorite movies, but this one didn't give me any. However, once I started watching the film, I was quickly charmed by the comedic setups, and that's where the film flourishes. The dilemmas they put Woolley in are not only hilarious, but pretty realistic too. Every time one of them starts, you say to yourself, oh yeah, I guess something like that would happen in this situation. This realistic nature helps ground the film and suck the viewer in. You constantly wonder how Woolley's gonna solve certain problems, and the writers usually resolve them in a fairly clever fashion. There's nothing better than a clever comedy, and this film has some really smart moments that will keep any viewer engaged. With that being said, the film does have its wacky moments too. In fact, most of the time, the film does a great job incorporating these wacky parts into all of its setups. I think it's the perfect balance, and I'm hard-pressed to think of any other movie from this time that creates such a unique tone. Something I do have to address, though, is the ending. Without giving too much away, let's just say it's not as clever as the rest of the movie. It doesn't ruin it by any means, but I just thought it was a little weak compared to everything else the filmmakers did. But with that being said, I have rewatched this film a couple times since, and I still like it a lot. Another aspect to this film I really like is the supporting cast. Every one of them is memorable and adds to the situations in the movie. They're all very particular and make big impressions on the audience. The filmmakers could have easily overused everyone, but they chose to be sparing with their appearances. I think this helps greatly. It feels like they all get the perfect amount of screen time. Probably my favorite is Una O'Connor and her sons. I don't want to spoil their role in the film, but they do a great job working off each other. They all carry a similar demeanor and just barely don't fit into caricatures. Another highlight is Laird Cregar. Many cite him as a sort of straight man, but I think he's wacky in his own right. He has an underlying eccentricity that Cregar masterfully plays around with. Sometimes he's super serious, other times he'll have a more comedic moment that will land and it won't feel out of place. However, the two leads really do steal the show. Monty Woolley and Gracie Fields make a wonderful couple. They have some wonderfully British chemistry, and you really do feel a connection between them. At a glance, they feel like different people. He's a little boisterous and upfront, while she's quieter and more thoughtful. But as the film goes on, you realize they actually have a lot in common personality-wise. They just go about expressing themselves in different ways. It makes them feel like a real couple. At first, you might think this character is a typecast for Woolley, as it's very similar to his other famous roles, most notably The Man Who Came to Dinner and The Pied Piper. But Woolley finds a way to make this character distinct from the others. Although he's constantly complaining and gets flustered easily, he has many moments of lightheartedness that make him very likable. I actually understand what Gracie Fields sees in him when they start talking to each other. And Fields is the actress I want to talk about because she does so much with her character. I can't say this enough, Gracie Fields is so delightful to watch. For most of the film, she comes off as straight-laced, but she does act out when she feels she needs to. It's those moments where she really shines. You can tell Fields was having a lot of fun with this part, and that fun comes across to the audience. I especially love when she first meets Woolley and they go get him a new hat. When the shopkeeper gives them a hard time, she puts him in his place with the most British stern talking to I've ever heard. Half the time, I just love watching Woolley's reactions to her. They're priceless. Gracie Fields was born January 9th, 1898 in Lancashire, England. She made her stage debut in 1905 at age 7. Ever since that day, she was determined to become an actress. Fame finally came in 1924 when she starred with her husband in a revue called Mr. Tower of London. Her performance in that led to a singing and dramatic stage career. In 1931, she made her movie debut in the British film Sally in Our Alley. After that, she had a pretty lucrative film career in the 30s, but found filmmaking boring. It was clear she loved performing in front of a live audience. In 1939, she had a nervous breakdown and decided to take a break from performing. Not too long later, World War II was declared. Once she recovered, she spent most of the war period entertaining the troops. At one point, she even traveled to France before it was taken over by the Germans. Sometimes her performances were interrupted by bombings. It was her commitment to the troops that led to her decline in popularity back in Britain. After the war was over, she had trouble recapturing the status she once had. She was able to make some movies, like this one, but her work seemed to be mostly in radio and TV. However, she was able to re-find an audience with her singing career. She was making new music and performing live all the way until her passing in 1979. She was 81 years old. So Fields was actually a pretty popular performer in Britain, but many of us never got a chance to know her. So if you want to discover a popular British performer or watch a wacky yet clever classic comedy, then I highly recommend Holy Matrimony.